later, many months.
Okay. If you guys can hear me, put a one in the chat, please. Help your girl out. Help your girl out. StreamYard just don't want us to be great, but we're gonna be great. Okay. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome back to the Real Precious Network. Tonight it is just me, myself, and I. We have 3 a.m. I believe he is in the comments. I see him in the chat. Tonight we're gonna be talking about some questions that I have seen on Reddit. This is amping us up for what is to come. because in the near future we will have a panel, and so excited about this panel. Definitely hit the like button, subscribe, all the things. Okay, share this video, the Adoptee Foster Show. But in the near future we will have a live panel of those who are adopted, those who are uh, therapists and adoptee advocates, parents, adoptive parents are going to be on the panel. I'm so excited about this panel that we have coming up. So this show, that I see your comment there, this show is a little bit in preparation for that. Definitely get your questions ready. Definitely, start thinking about what you want to ask this panel, because I think it's going to be a great panel with great perspective, and we'll be able to help the adoptee foster community. I think it will be very, very, very good for the community, and just the perspectives alone. We talk about from adoptee standpoint because we are adoptees. We've been in foster care. However, I always want it to be inclusive, because that's what adoption is. It's in a very inclusive, lifelong journey. And so, I would welcome adoptive parents to come on the panel and give their perspective, give their experiences, give their real life experiences. Before this is the Adoptee Foster, it is the Real Precious Network, right? And I think, for so long, adoptees feel like they live in a dual reality, and you don't know what to make of it. You have identity issues. And so at the end of the day, I always say, be real with yourself so you can be real with others. Because if you can't be real with yourself, it's a very uncomfortable state of being. You're wavering, you're teeter-tottering, you're, walking along the fence, and you should stand firm in who you are. You should own your story. You should be, proud of your story, no matter how good, bad, or ugly it is. It is what it is, right? It's reality. And, you can't think less of yourself because you don't want to point out those uncomfortable or those realities that's going to rock the boat. It's part of who you are. It's the makings of who you are, and makings meaning present day, because it is still making you who you are. And so again, I can't wait for this panel that we have coming up. It is going to be awesome. I believe four, five, I believe five, six, seven. I can't have that many now, child. I don't pay that much for the StreamYard subscription. I'm trying to think how many I have and how many we can hold on the panel. And I definitely want this to be a usual thing, because I believe that we should have this community where we are, all being able to give our perspectives. But enough of that. How are you, Mr. 3 a.m.?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey. I was having some technical difficulties, which means none of my material is back here. We just doing it real and raw tonight. Y'all might have to hold up a couple seconds while I, get what I need to get, but it's saved on my computer so I can get to it quick. But I don't know what it is with StreamYard. My computer works perfectly fine all day, every day, and then I go to hit go live, and everything just freezes and glitches. Child, I don't know. It's the Matrix. We're in the Matrix. All right, so the first video that, and you heard, and not you heard, about the panel that we have coming up on June 16th, I believe is the dates. Let me make sure. June 16th. We also have a guest coming in next week. Okay, we're gonna keep it. Look, we want to try and keep them rolling. We actually have a guest next week, and she reached out and said that she wanted to be a part of the community. She wanted to give her perspective. She has some educational background in adoption, and was adopted herself, so she has real life experience. And so I'm actually looking forward to that too. I don't want to skip over that, trying to get to the 16th, but we have some good things coming up, and I think it'll just broaden the community that we're building over here. And I'm glad that the word is getting out, and I'm glad that people are volunteering and willingly wanting to be on the panel. If anybody know me, I don't like a stingy giver. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do it because you want to do it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You check us out, view us, see what we're about. But do it because you want to do it. And I love the fact that, I go to my inbox and I'm like, 5 unread messages. What's going on here? And it's all people who are willing to come on the panel and have these conversations with us. So I'm excited. I'm, going to be preparing for that. And so we're rolling over here. So I wanted to get that out the way. Guys, again, definitely hit that like button, subscribe, share this video. Again, folks are seeing it. Okay, folks are interested. They are feeling led to join the community. So definitely share it. You don't. And those who know or may not know, I am not monetized. I don't do this and get money for it. I do it because I believe that our voices will help those who don't have voices, or those who do have voices and they're very small and their inner voice, and they use their inside voice, and they're dying to use their outside voice. They're dying to be able to tell the truth about who they are and the things that they experience, the thoughts and feelings that go through them. And that's what we want to invite in, those who are willing and those who want to start that journey. Because we talked about the fog. You can be in the fog for a very, very long time. The ending stage of the fog is actual freedom, and you want to be free from the fog. So definitely hit the like button, share, subscribe. All right. So this first video that I saw, I thought it was a cute video. And the smallest things can mean the biggest things. And I wanted to show this video because tonight is called Adoptee Wants to Know When Will I Feel Safe? And we'll get to that actual topic. However, I believe adoption, these conversations are uncomfortable because no one puts the language behind it. Like, no one has the language to go with these situations and realities that we go through. Would you agree, or would you say it's it's something that comes natural and you could just talk about it?
I definitely don't come natural. Like you gotta like um if I knew somebody that was like a friend of mine or like a family member or something, I would talk to them about it. But I wasn't on the internet talking about it before I met you.
Mm,
Like um it's not that I'm ashamed, it's just that you have to be careful, like, who you share your business with too sometimes because, like, they could try to use that against you, you know? So I think you really have to be mindful of, um, because people, especially when you're a kid, people could be cruel. You know how kids are. Oh, you're adopted. That's not your real family now. That's why you don't look like nobody in your family. You know,
mm.
those types of things. So it just depends.
Yeah, I mean, you already got to have tough skin for adoption, and
Hmm.
it's not even that you have to have it; you grow it. It's one of those things where it's just like, where does extra layer coming from? Like, you literally grow it throughout your whole life. I mean,
Hmm.
skin is the largest organ we'll have, and we literally, grow this like emotional the twilight zone. Like, we're just existing, but we're real. We're here. You can touch us. We're not, but sometimes we feel like we're shifting in between different spheres of life, and it teaches us to be a little anxious, or be a little apprehensive of who we talk to, or who we share with, or who we connect to, because adoption as well as foster care teaches us that loss is a part of life. Like, we learned that very early on. We it's just a part of, it's the literally the beginning of our pain. And so,
Hmm.
you know, this video that I came across, I thought it was, again, cute but very profound, because child, her daughter had at a loss for words.
My daughter had a question for me, and I didn't know how to answer it. So, I'm adopted. She knows I was adopted. And she's 7. She just turned 7. Like, what does that really mean, right? What does she understand about that? She goes, Mom, if Grandma didn't have you, how did she get you? And I sat there, and I've been to therapy. I've been to years of therapy. I was just like, how do I explain this in a way that like doesn't sound fucked up?
Mm.
There was someone who didn't want me. There was someone who couldn't keep me. There was someone who they gave me to someone else. Like what? Like what? Anyway, it's beyond my pay grade. I don't know what to say. So if you have any advice, how am I supposed to make it sound not kind of icky? I don't know. Like, I know there's so many opinions about adoption. It's unethical, or it's like beautiful, all the things. I'm just like, what do I say to my 7-year-old?
The questions that adoptees have, especially when you have biological children, you have someone that is biologically bound to you. But what did you think about the video? Because we have to have these conversations. It's crazy. We have to have these conversations. It's not quite like where do babies come from? Right. It's on a whole nother, like a little bit of a step up, like a little bit like, well, if grandma didn't have you, how did she get you? What's going on here? Where's she snatching you?
The kid, like, break it down for me. What tell me what happened. Like, if you
how you get here, Mom?
I mean, it's a conversation that is difficult. It's another conversation that sometimes you don't expect kids to actually ask. Like, and that tells you how aware children are
Mm-hmm.
and how much they pay attention.
Yeah.
And the lady was like, "Well, this is above my pay grade."
You know,
Um,
it is difficult. It's difficult. And that's why I always say, always will say, tell them early, tell them often. Tell them early, tell them often.
mhm,
Because we're going to go over a story with an adoptee, and there were some things withheld from him, and so those big feelings at that bigger age is harder to contain, rather than when they're small and when they're curious and when they can't really attach the negative feelings that you may have towards the situation to the reality. They can't, they're curious. And so she said, how do I explain this without it being icky, or and one thing that an adoptee will tell you, I don't care what adoptee it is, okay? I can almost bet 100%. Adoptees want you to be honest with them. Be real with them, right? Like, don't sugarcoat my life to protect me, because I'm living this life. And so this is going to actually, prepare me and show me how to deal with difficult things. It's almost like, our adoptive parents, they love us and they want to protect us and they want to shield us. However, sometimes it gets in the way of us actually learning life. Like, our life is the first area in which we should experience how to manage complex feelings and how to explain them and how to have feelings towards them. We don't have to wait for the outside life to do that for us. Like, that's
mhm,
one thing about that. Like, we don't have to wait for those things that happen in the outside life to us. It happened to us before we even had a chance to experience, a lot of things. Some children were babies. Some were able to talk and had their own thoughts and feelings. And so, this is a perfect learning opportunity, and you build on it. That's why I always say that those who adopt, or those who are having children in general, to take some children's psychology courses, or just look up videos on those who study that and how to have the conversation with a child and having that distance from being in that place yourself, right? Because
Mhm.
when you become an adult, you become so distant from that. And one of the things that even adults get away from is play. Any child psychologist will tell you that as you get older, you get away from playing and being joyful and just doing things on a whim, where children are based in that. Like, I think that's why adoption was traumatic for me, because that's the life I lived before I was adopted. Like, you can tell me I was in Wonderland and I, you know what I mean? Like, I would have believed you. But when I got adopted, it was so different. And it was just like, that was just like snatched away. It was taken away. And so you have to keep children in that land of learning when they are curious about it. So be honest. Now, the intensity of the honesty is what will change over the years. The
Mhm.
conversation will look different. The conversation will seem a little bit more coherent to a child who's growing and having relationships with, she's going to have a relationship with her mom. So that's only going to evolve. She's only going to have more questions like, oh, what did mom do when you went to prom? Or, what did she do when you were a baby, and X, Y, and Z. We don't know her origin adoptive story. We don't know how it went down.
Mhm.
But her daughter is going to have those questions now that she knows that her mom is adopted. And I'm glad that she didn't hide it from her. But that is a question that I think a lot of people struggle with. Like, how do I even explain this to a child?
So, how did you explain it to your daughter?
It's funny because when I was preparing the show, I was talking to her and she was like, I remember seeing pictures and you telling me, the story. I also asked her, how does she feel when she's with one side of the family versus the other side of the family?
Mhm.
And she says what biological family is just like an instant connection. She said, it's not that I don't have a connection with our family. Because for her, they're my adopted family, but do she call them like they're not her adopted family? Are they? Like, it's the things that we got to be like, no, because they adopted me, so I guess they did adopt her. As if I don't want to look at it like that, but and the both sides of the family, I just hate that we have to have that type of terminology. But she saw pictures. I have a few pictures of when I was younger. And she was like, you told me your mom was sick, and my mom had a drug issue, and when she was younger, I told her she was sick, and that's exactly what that is a sickness. And so we can, I don't want to say dumb down the truth, but we can water it down where it's still the truth.
Mhm.
It's just a truth that they can consume at that time. And then you eventually, whenever I went to go see or meet or reunite with biological family, and I'm trying to think, when I first went, I don't think I had her at that time, but every time I went by myself. I didn't want to bring her into an environment where I didn't even know, what was going on or what could happen. And so, she is not a stranger to any of it at all. And so that's again why it's so important to tell them early and often she's not adopted, but she does have a mother who's adopted. And
Mhm.
so, that is something that a lot of people can or cannot say, because we make up what, about 3 or 4%, adoptees make up 3 or 4% of the population, which is not a lot, which is why these conversations are important, because while they're not a lot, adoptees are, higher in rates of self-deletion and depression and anxiety.
Mhm.
And that can spill over on people who probably intended to help them, people who intended to be there to love them. However, it is important to have these conversations. And if you don't know the language, be inquisitive about that as an adult. Like I said, a child psychologist, a child therapist, someone who can, a teacher, teachers deal with children all the time, and they manage children all the time, and they know what comes out of children's mouth in this day and age. You know, sometimes I think that adoption agencies can give you very outdated information, because you have your people who are out in the field, and then you have your people who sit at a desk. And people who sit at a desk, yeah, they may have to go through an hour training or a weekend retreat or whatever the case may be to prepare them.
Right.
However, when they don't have that hands-on experience, they don't even have the verbiage. So they tell you what they read. They tell you what is suggested to them, and these people aren't out in the field. So it is important to have that verbiage and to have those conversations. And beside the obvious, but why do you think it's uncomfortable for an adult her age to say to spell it out to a 7-year-old? Why do you think it is so difficult other than not having the conversations?
Because maybe she hasn't had the full story disclosed to her properly the way she would feel safe to discuss it with her daughter.
Mm,
Maybe she is like me, where I am still in the discovery phase
very much so.
of trying to find the rest of my family. And, um, maybe it could bring up some old wounds that she might have, right? Like, so she might, we don't know her story, but like, whatever the case is that she is dealing with, she just didn't feel comfortable, or she doesn't have the right tools to actually know how to break it down where she could help her daughter understand what it is.
Yeah, and I agree with all of those. And it made me think that, if biological, or excuse me, if adoptees who are now old enough to have children, and you go through whatever it is you go through in adoption, I think that everyone goes through a little bit of trauma, whether they want to recognize it as that or not. Um, but I always say that we should get lifelong therapy. Like, it should just be a thing, like free, free, free. You can call anytime. Um, so if we have to do that, wouldn't you think that someone who adopts a child who is not even, so she is nervous of telling her child her story, at that tender age and her big age, wouldn't you think that it's difficult for someone who is not biologically related to you to have that conversation, because they don't even know, like they know what a file says, like, you know what I mean? um that's the reason why I believe that those who adopt should be in therapy themselves. It should be because you need the regulation of your emotions. You need to talk it out so you have the words and the verbiage and the communications to get across when it's one of those days and you like, why did I do this? Like, why did I
Mhm.
make the decision to adopt, right? You need to be able to go to a support group or go to your therapist, or adoptive parents or adoptees support group, because it helps you hear the things that maybe your adoptee is saying to you that another adoptee is saying to their parents, and so that
Mhm.
you know that you're not alone. You know that these actions, yeah, they're probably typical toddler or teenager actions, but they're also rooted in, they have deeper roots. And so with adoptees, you do have to get to the root of the issue, because if not, the surface level is never ever going to feel real. It's always going to feel like a passing passive relationship. And who wants to adopt children to have that type of relationship with them, unless you have that type of relationship with yourself?
Yeah, it's it's funny and it's not funny, right? Because like you think about when, like when you were just explaining about how you were telling you about your daughter, and also I respect that didn't take her with you because you didn't know, that was a form of protection that you were um, providing over her because you didn't know, you don't necessarily have, you don't go to anything and like, oh, they're going to hurt us or, but that's just, um, you know, when you have to feel it out, basically. I mean, even as an adult, like being around people that you've never been around, you have to slowly build up that trust. And once you build up that trust, then you can bring your daughter around and be like, okay, I feel safe. Now
Mm.
you can meet, whoever you are deciding, that you've connected with, right? So, um, and I think every parent should be like that if especially if they're adopted
Yeah.
and they try to reach out to their family. And when you look at how she was describing the story, it felt like maybe she didn't expect her daughter to actually ask that question. Like it could have been a surprise to her because you know how kids are. They will they will ask some of the craziest questions, and you'll be like, where'd that come from?"
But
But
I don't think that it's random. Honestly, I believe that children are the closest to God. And children actually are here for us to see ourselves and to see how we can better ourselves. And same thing with relational partners. Like your spouse is supposed to be able to see you for who you are, and the way that they do that is they ask you questions. Now it's for us as adults to be able to regulate our emotions so we can come to these conversations, with some tact and some ease. And so I think that when questions like this come out of the air, we shouldn't take it lightly, because now it's like, okay, what part of myself am I not addressing to the point where I can't even speak about this? There was a long time I couldn't speak about my adoption. I couldn't speak freely the way that I speak today because I'll be boo-hooing. It would be like, why, God? Like, why? Like, I'm still asking you why. It was to a point where it was just like, I'm just not ready, and so I knew that I had to do a little bit more healing. I had to get rid of the blame game. I had to forgive. I had to do all those things for me to show up whole and healthy. For me to be able to, and honestly, there's nothing wrong with telling someone, even a child, you know what, I don't have the answer for that right now, but we're gonna have this conversation again. Let's try again in 2 days. Give me 2 days. Is that good? It's okay to not have the answers. It's okay. Like, I think that one of the marks of a great leader is to be able to be honest and say, you know what, I don't have the answer for that, but I will find it for you. I will get that answer for you. It's
Mhm.
okay to have that, and that goes for adoptees. That go for our parents. That goes for anyone. It is okay to not have the answer. It's okay to gather yourself and to know that you're not in the emotional, you don't have the emotional bandwidth to even address it or go there, but it is that's one of those checkpoints in life that we don't think that we're going to get. We don't think that we're going to experience it. We don't think anyone is going to check us. Like her daughter kind of checked her a little bit and she don't even know it. She had the and it's almost like, Mom, where are you coming from? Where are you now? It's a check without even knowing it. And I think that life gives us those, and it gives us them the most when we have children. And I think that's another reason why a lot of adoptees will say, my story, I really didn't think much of it until I had a child. Because now you're reliving the ages and stages that you don't remember, that weren't lived, like, your biological child ages and stages are being lived. It's a whole lot of thinking and aloneness that comes, and oneness that should come with that. And it definitely comes when you have children. When you by yourself, you can shrug it off. You can go do something to keep you busy. You can, but children give you a sense of responsibility. And it's not only with them, it's with yourself first. And
Mhm.
parents need to realize that, especially adoptive parents. If you're going to adopt children who are not biologically yours, make sure that you are a sound person, because children will come out the blue and say, well, if grandma didn't have you, how you get break it down. Explain it to me like I'm a 7-year-old, because I am. So that's why it's important for us to always be working on ourselves. And no matter what age and stage you are, it's important to brush up on your communication styles and communication skills, and listen to things, read different literature. That's what's important, because then you can just pull those things out of your toolbox whenever you need them. It'll be a little bit easier, and you won't feel so pressured to have the perfect answer or have to have the right answer. You'll have the answer that feels most comfortable with you and where you are at that time. All right. Child is so small. I can't tell what is what. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to stop the banner because we got to see all of it. So this is an adoptee. And again, this is a Reddit story. So all these Reddit stories that we're going to go through were posted within the last week. So they're not like 3 years old, 4 years old, 10 years. They're fresh, real people. So he says, I found out something my adoptive family kept from me that has ruined a part of me. I found out recently that my biological father has been sending me letters and gifts all throughout my childhood, and my parents just threw them away and hid them from me. He had prison art made for me, many letters and birthday cards. For almost my whole life, I have wondered if he ever thought about me, and honestly, if he even remembered me. I understand why they might not have felt it was best to share with me. And I do think it's a situation where you can't know the full effects until it's already happened. I just can't help but feel so upset about it, because I have spent my entire life wondering if and hoping he cared even just a little bit. I am in my 20s and I'm just now learning about this. I wish those things would have been saved for me so I could have a decision to look through them or not. I found out I have another sister as well. Now I'm working on contacting him because he got out of prison, and my birth mother told me he's made a better life for himself. She told me she has a couple things to show me, and I'm thankful to at least have that. I just can't help but feel so lied to and hurt. I was wondering if anyone else ever had to navigate these feelings, because I don't know anyone who could possibly understand this in real life. So, this is not something that I've ever really experienced. I don't believe, not to my knowledge. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced anything like this. If y'all experienced it in the chat, definitely drop it in there. However, this is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking in a way that we can understand why he doesn't have contact with his father, obviously. But sometimes we have to get out of our own selfish ways and let people be a parent how they can be a parent. And although he's adopted, what was wrong with saving these items in a box for him? What was wrong with reserving them for, an 18th birthday or whatever the case may be? Why throw away, hide, destroy? And now he's found out somehow, some way, he's found out. And now we have to deal with feelings of betrayal.
That happens a lot. It, you know, I'm not saying that every person's been in jail, but like just, and that's the thing, that's the problem with, well, that's not one, that's one of the problems with being adopted is like because you could, um, like you were saying, actually, the when Treese was on, and she was talking about how they were seeing her mother in the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't imagine, and they knew it, and I couldn't imagine like her coming home like, "Oh yeah, we seen your mother in the store today." Like, what?
Just put me in the middle. Like,
You know,
what am I supposed to say to that? But then if I
yeah.
have some feeling towards it, I'm wrong, you know?
Hmm. And they took it upon themselves to actually, um, they acknowledged they received the items, but then they threw them away. Like you said, instead of like just putting them somewhere safe. So, like you said, for a 18th or a 16th birthday, could be like, okay, this is your birth father or whatever. He is away, but we wanted you to have these so you can make the decision, once you turned 18 to contact him. And, if you do or don't want to know, because it, some people want to know, some people don't want to know, some people want to be contacted, some people don't want to be contacted. So, and then to come find out they have a sibling, that changes things. Because, when you find out you have a sibling, it
That's a deeper
actually,
hurt.
yeah, it actually makes you, it gives you more incentive to actually want to try to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially, I don't know if the person in the story had a sibling already, that they were living with, but it's different when you actually have a biological sibling that you're actually trying to connect with. You have an incentive, you get more, how, I don't know about you, but like when I first started searching, I was getting excited because I was just trying to contact them, and hopefully, that someone will actually contact me back, and that's the excitement that you get from it. But I don't think the parents was right. They shouldn't have not done that. They should have. They took it upon them. It's like when they take it upon themselves to change the name, which they have, they shouldn't be doing that. And this is a form of identity. Like this father probably was in these stories, probably telling, you know, about how, you know, he got in the position that he was, right? Like so, and or maybe he was explaining, how he was adopted, and but now, you know, they don't have that story because the parents being selfish. But I can see both sides because like maybe like the the parents were like, some parents they be like they think that just because you go find somebody, that they think that you're going to build a relationship with them and then forget about them that actually raised you, and that's really not the case. It's really just connecting with someone that you don't know.
Yeah. And you know, like you said, you can see both sides, but so could he. He
Mhm.
said, I can understand why they did it. They wanted me to be safe. And again, why not save the letters for a different time or a special time where it's, we didn't want to keep these away from you. We want you to know what your father has to say to you and things of that nature. And then that's a perfect time of you, if there's an opportunity for him to get out whenever he gets out, would you be interested in meeting him? Like, I think sometimes we make it harder than it has to be
Mhm.
because we're such a fixture. It's just like, all right, let's place them here now. And it is just like lights, camera, action. And it's like, no, this ain't no movie. This is real life. Nobody's screaming, cut, do that over. It's
Mhm.
real life. And the things that we allow to make us uncomfortable are the probably the biggest areas that families need to be intervened at, right? Like you want these letters to go in the trash because you don't want him to know his father, who, I don't know what he did to get locked up, but obviously he did something bad to get behind them bars. All right. You don't want him to know that reality. You don't want him to build a bond or an attachment, when at the end of the day, that's probably something that's going to happen whether you want it to happen or not. So why not be an advocating, supportive, still being a parent? There is no, we just going to let you freely. No, we're going to facilitate this, and we're going to support you through this, because we don't know what you're facing. You don't know what you're facing. But why put us in the middle of what seems like to be, it's not even a tug of war. It's almost just like we just shutting the door closed on any possibility of you even knowing them. But when children find out, and he's not a child, he's in his 20s, and a pivotal point of his life at that, 20s for a man, you're still developing, you're still growing, but you're also shaping your future. You're doing things to shape your future at that age. And while his father made a mistake, who knows if he has a relationship with his adoptive father. You can't hide the reality of our stories. We know that we're in this situation because we probably were not in the best environment. We can understand that. But you don't have to hide the truth of that reality to keep us from it. It's almost like we're not going to tell them, because if we tell them, then, and sometimes it's almost like, I hate to say it, but it's almost like a sick thing. It's sometimes it's almost sickening how adoptive parents will use it as a, well, they're not doing good, they're not in any condition to see their child, so we're not even going to acknowledge that they exist. We're not, and to me, that's not family. This family that you want, the actions and the decisions that you're choosing to make is not in the name of family. It's in the name of selfishness. And sometimes that has to be brought to the forefront, because even the woman that we had her video up of, when she changed her son's name, she realized later that she shouldn't have done that.
That was the biggest mistake that lady could have did.
And she admitted that. But you really don't know those things until years later, until the damage is already done, until your adoptee is withdrawing from you or not being able to connect with you. And, sometimes the no contact with adoptive parents, that is a boundary that adoptees put in place. Like, we were talking about Treese last week, where it was like, sometimes you got to put these boundaries in place in order to protect, again, your well-being, your mental health. And when you're an adult, sometimes it's harder to keep that boundary because of all the intertwining relationships, if you have kids, but at the same time, how do you teach someone who doesn't want to be taught? You don't. You show them, right? At this point, you got to show them, because they're not willing to listen to anything that you have to say. They twist your words around, they use it against you. There's no accountability. So there's that barrier. And when you're in situations like this, a child coming out at an older age is only going to hurt the situation. Like, what are we so afraid of? I can't wait for this panel, because
I'm really excited for that.
We have for adoptive parents, because I've never had these conversations with my parents, with these deep conversations. Just like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember that. I don't, and so we can't get deeper into, conversation and connection, because no one wants to swim that deep. So again, I'm glad that we're having this panel, because these are honest questions as an adoptee that I have for adoptive parents. What are you so afraid of? Because that's what it's fear. It's not, an agency saying, oh, well, don't let them. Everybody is sensible. If it's a bad environment, of course, don't let them. However, how long are you going to hold on to information that is rightfully theirs?
Mm-hmm.
They have a right to know, because I always say the blood don't lie. So you might adopt this child, but they might turn out just like their daddy. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Just because again, we say this too, just because you get adopted don't mean better. Adopted means different. I have a different life now. It don't mean that I necessarily have a better life than I would have had it. Now we can all summarize our stories and realize if we would have had it better or not, but it is still different. I'm in a different environment. I'm around different people. I'm with different walks of life over here. And so, we got to be honest about that. And so, I that's my biggest question. What are we so afraid of? And whatever that thing is it on the adoptee, or is it something that adoptive parents have to work on? Because if it's something that adoptive parents have to work on, why do adoptees feel penalized for it? Why do we feel like we have to um, um, miss out because you're uncomfortable, or you don't know how to have these conversations, or because we look up at our parents like, well, you're supposed to know how to do this. You don't know how to do this? Like, what do you mean you don't know how to do this? That's how kids see their parents, as their heroes, as their super. We don't see you as a real human until we become teenagers and start having our first little jobs, and they tell make sure you bring your money because I ain't paying for dinner tonight. Like, that's when we
Mm-hmm.
see them as real people. Like, dang, too old for the kids menu and you don't want to pay? Oh, okay. Like,
You're right though, because like in my eyes, I looked at my parents as superheroes
yeah, like you got.
because I looked up to my parents because that was the only thing I knew, and I despise people who look up to people who are in entertainment business because that's not real life.
Right.
Like that's your real life is the positive people that you have around you,
Mhm.
and sometimes it might not be your parents. It could be somebody else. It could be a neighbor. It could be a teacher. Somebody that influenced you in a way where it guided you to where you are today. And so I think people really need to latch on to that and really teach their kids that. Latch on to people who are positive influences and not people that want to do things that ain't what you're supposed to be doing.
I would agree. I would agree. But yeah, that's how we would see it. And so from the adoptee perspective, it's just like, what are we so afraid of? Those are fears that we have to face, and name, not even face, because I don't even think it's something that you have to face. I think it's a fear that you have to name and tell yourself that it's not going to keep the connection from you and your child from getting deeper. It's not going to hinder your relationship.
I think it actually hinders it when they don't disclose or don't share information with you.
Yeah,
And
my
when you're constantly like, and I go back to the story I told, I was, and I was, there were several times where I was going to ask my mom, and I just, I was like, I would be scared, because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, honestly. Um, and one day, I just kind of picked her vibe, see, see what she was feeling like that day, and it was a good day, and we got to talk about some real stuff, and I think that's especially in this panel. I think we're gonna ask some questions that are going to be you know not investigative questions, but just tough questions that um, you know ask people like how if they told their kids that they're adopted, and like what age, and how how did they go about that, or did they did the adopted son or daughter come to you first and start the conversation? Because like you say, you think it should be the adults, and I felt like as I was getting older, my parents was not they were not trying to bring it to me, so I had to take it upon myself. Um, and I was starting to snoop around, and I was starting to find things, and then I was starting to hear things, and so I was like, well, I just need to I just need to toughen up and ask this question. I need to talk and be able to get this information. Um, and like I said, I don't think it should be the kids that actually having these conversations. Like the parents, they should be figuring out, when is a good time to have that discussion. Um, Often, not just one time. Be like, oh yeah, you're adopted. Okay, what does that mean?
I have someone in my family right now, and I know my aunt struggles with having that conversation or starting and
Mhm.
initiating that conversation. But I'm like, Auntie, adoptee here. Tell her, tell her. And it's not, and in that situation, it's not like her biological mom hasn't been in her life. And so that's even better because she won't wonder where she been. She won't wonder who she is. So why withholding that piece of information from her such a difficult to do? Like, why is it such a difficult task? And, again, adoptees just really want honesty. We really want you to let your hair down, child. Let's just have a conversation. Like, you know what I mean? You
Mhm.
get what makes you comfortable. I'll get what makes me comfortable. And let's really have a real conversation, not a robotic conversation, not a politically correct conversation. Let's be able to express our emotions in a non-judgmental way. Let's be able to be honest with each other. Because how are you going to move on? How are you going to have an authentic relationship if you don't have that type of conversation? Um, and having it with young ones when they're younger just makes it so much easier. Will they have a lot of questions? Yeah. But again, remember the method of, I don't know the answer to that right now, but when I do, we'll have this conversation again. And you have to then bring the conversation up and make sure the child is comfortable with having the conversation at that time. Don't just say we're going to have it again and we'll circle back and you never do. You
Mhm.
have to be a person of your word, because that's another thing. Adoptees look at patterns and they look at how things are done, and how the grumblings under your breath or the little comments. Like, kids are very we kids observe a lot. Like, I was that child where I observed a lot, because again, I was placed from one environment to the next, and in the environment that I was in, I never felt like I had to look over my shoulder. Like, I always felt comfortable. I always felt part of the community. But when I got into a new environment, I'm like, okay.
Who this?
People always say I look mean. I look like I didn't want nobody to speak to me, and they were right. Like, they were absolutely right. That was the case at that time, because it's just like, who are you? And getting to, do I really want to get to know you? Do I really want to get to know you? And so those are the struggles that we go through when we don't have those type of conversations. You're always having a million and one questions in your head with no place to have them land safely, and so they stay in your head. Some adoptees self-harm, some adoptees cope, some adoptees get addicted, some adoptees do the worst, and some adoptees turn that pain into triumph, and they go hard and they work hard, and they're very independent, and they want to prove everybody wrong. But at the end of the day, they struggle with it too. They just mask it with something different.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So this one, nobody really talks about how long it takes for a house to feel safe to an adopted child. This is going to be a good topic for the panel as well. Says our adopted son has been with us for a while now, and logically, I know adjustment takes time. I know routines matter, patience matters, consistency matters, but emotionally, some days it's harder than I expected. These are moments where he seems completely comfortable, joking around, asking questions, wanting attention. Then other days it's like a wall suddenly appears again and nobody can reach him properly. The smallest things can set him off too. A change in plans, a different food, even moving stuff around the house. Last week he got upset because I moved some random plastic tubes from a storage drawer while cleaning, and apparently he had decided that was his spot for them. Full meltdown over something I honestly wouldn't have thought twice about. I think that's the part I'm learning slowly for kids who have unstable environments. Little things probably don't feel little. I've spent so much time reading parenting forums, books, Amazon reviews, and even random discussions on Alibaba parenting products at night, trying to feel more prepared. It still feels like I'm learning in real time most days. For adoptive parents further along in the process, when did things start feeling emotionally secure for everyone involved? So I know that this is a question for adoptive parents. And I think that a lot of questions that adoptive parents have for other adoptive parents are valid questions. However, I do believe that the adoptee should be included in these questions because you're asking someone else who had to go through the same ground level experience as you with a totally different kid. And so at least, and so get that advice. I'm not saying don't ask other adoptive parents, what did you do? How did you make them comfortable and things of that nature. However, again, this is an inclusive. This is why these support groups and being able to go to, I saw in, I believe it's Ohio, they have like adoptee camps where you can go to an adoptee camp. And the girl that I was looking at her page, she's an adoptee, biracial, and her biggest thing was she didn't know how to do her hair, and these camps teach you how to do your hair and things of that nature. It brings the community together of people who have similar experiences so they can share those experiences and be able to help themselves live through the journey a little bit easier with people that they can share these thoughts with. And so I think it's really important to get that adoptee answer on that. What as an adoptee, what made you feel safe? Because I believe that structure is important. Structure is very important. I believe that setting ground house rules are very important. I believe your parenting style is very important. And I believe for an adoptee, foster care child, an authoritative parent is not the best parent for an adoptee or foster child. And that is the parent that says, do what I tell you to do because I told you to do it. And I ain't gonna lie, I had them kind of parents. It was just like, do what I told you to do because my mom used to be military. My dad was very corporate America, and it was, and if you don't, you on punishment. That's the life I
Agree
live.
with you. Because when I was coming up, what things that I could remember, like I told you on the interview, they thought that I couldn't talk because of like, some of the trauma that I had been through.
Mhm.
And so I started going to speech therapy. I started going to like a hearing specialist. And so once they figured out, they were like, well, there's nothing, nothing wrong, mentally, it's just going to take some time for him to adjust and to feel comfortable. And maybe a year or two, maybe. I assume. I don't know. But I know that the treatment that they gave me, like far as how they parent, like you said, that's a big deal. My mother, she was very caring, very nurturing, very matter of fact. Um, you know, spent a lot of time, trying to learn and get to know me, and that's really important,
Mhm.
um, because it's a multitude of things, right? Like you have to learn like what kind of foods you like, what upsets your stomach, make sure you try not to feed, get that. And she would have like when we were growing up, I would have different things that I like for her to cook, and she would cook it because were, you know, they didn't hurt my stomach,
Mhm.
So, um, I think just figuring that out, I don't think there's a set rule that you can say, oh, you do this, 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 and then the security will come. I think it's like you said, it's just um, learning. It's a real time job. It's like learning on the job. Like it's not. You can read books all day, but like if you are not going through that, if you're not um, trying to figure out what's going on, or like you said, your parents were like basically do this or you're on punishment. I mean, that works in certain aspects, but not everyday life. Like if they say, well, you can't go, you can't go someplace, and if you do, you're gonna know the ramifications, right? You're gonna be on punishment.
Mhm. Right. Right.
But it's different, like when you're trying to cultivate a safe space, safe environment where the kid can actually be a kid and not, fighting to understand like why a grown person don't want to take care of me. You know,
Yeah. And it's not that they don't want to take, I don't think that, adoptive parents go into it not wanting to take care of the child. They're just unaware of the actual child. You go in with so many bullet points of what you should do and what best practices are and
mhm,
what's worked in the past and what they have documented, and written in books and things of that nature. But like you said, it's such a hands-on experience. You really don't know what you're getting because, like he said in this Reddit entry, or like the mother said, she goes, there are times where we're completely comfortable joking around, asking questions, wanting attention. So everything just seems so normal per se, right? Like there is no static, nothing muddy in the waters or moving
mhm.
the waters. And then other days it's like a wall suddenly appears again, and then nobody can reach him properly. The smallest things can set him off. She mentioned
I
she
was
said,
like that in a way.
oh, me
Um,
too. Me too.
like, some days, I watch cartoons, and then other days I just want to, like, I think I told you this, like when I was in elementary, I used to daydream a lot.
Mhm.
I used to just like look out the window and like not, I don't even know what I was thinking about, but just in a different, my mind was just like in a different zone. And teacher, now the thing about it though, like even though I was doing all of that, I was a very good student. So like my parents, another thing is, they just didn't expect me to learn in school. We had a routine, like when I came home, from school, you know, they would say, okay, before you can watch cartoons or before you can do any activities, we're gonna do your homework, and then we're gonna do some like we're going to do some spelling bees, or like we're going to do some math, because as a parent, you should not be dependent on your teachers to just teach your kids. Like you have to actually spend time with them. And that's, even though you're doing homework or you're building skills, you're still building emotional attachment, because
Mhm.
they'll feel comfortable coming to you for the homework, right? Like, so they won't be like, dang, I gotta ask mom to help me with this math, or
If
uh,
Johnny had 5 apples,
yeah. So I think there's emotional attachments in everything, right? Like, so um, like, even like, for example, when my mom would like bake cake, she was like, "You want to help me bake a cake?" I was like, "Yeah," but like I wouldn't be doing that. I would just be sitting there,
right?
just watching, But it's
Just
still, you're still building emotional attachment that way. Like you're around your parents, and they're talking to you, and they're like, "Oh, well, I do this." Half the time I won't pay attention. I was just there.
mm,
Um, and so I think when this panel is going to be very interesting, because I really want to know what adoptive parents actually think, or like how, when certain scenarios, happens, how do they react, or you know, who do they contact to, actually ask these questions, because are you actually reaching out? Do you have a support system? Do you have a therapist that you can contact, or do you have someone that's been through it? So it's going to be very interesting.
mhm. And we're not going to be the only adoptees on the panel. I did reach out to the gentleman I was telling you about. I saw
Mhm.
his story on Instagram a while ago, and something just told me to just reach out. I mean, I'm in sales. I'm used to just reaching out to people, introducing myself. And so I was like, you know what? Let me see if he wants to be on the panel. So he confirmed. So it's going to be it's going to be a mixture of community and one band, one sound type of thing, where we're all in the same place and we're able to give our viewers some perspectives that, they're not just hearing you and I all the time, but they're hearing people of
Mhm.
the community and hearing what they have to say too. One thing I did want to point out on this particular entry, it says last week he got upset because I moved some random plastic tubes from a storage drawer while cleaning, and apparently he had decided that was his spot for them. So, one thing about children who are adopted, especially if you were older and got adopted, sometimes you may share a room with someone when you're in foster care. You may not share a room with someone. You
Mhm.
may be very protective over your items and things that you hold dear to you. Like I remember I had this white bear, and it's funny because I have this picture of myself, and I have the white bear in that picture, and I was like, wow, I had it that long, because I remember having it at my last foster home. So
Mhm.
that picture, I probably was maybe 4 or 5, maybe 4 or 5 in that picture. And I had that white bear in the background. I remember having it at my last foster home, and then I
Mhm.
don't remember having it anymore. But that was just like my bear. Like that was my bear. That was my thing, like that I held close, right? And then I do have a little stuffed animal that my friends gave to me when I left Jersey City, like
Mhm.
before I left for good. They gave it. So that's like a thing that I'll keep forever. You know what I mean? It's not, I never get rid. I always know where it's at. It's in a special spot. So if somebody moved that, then I would be moody too. You probably like what are you touching my stuff for? Like I'm the kind of person, I'm not gonna go through somebody else's stuff. Like I'm not
Mhm.
that like, ooh, I wonder what they have in there. The phones, ooh, I wonder what no. Because I believe that my things are my things,
Mhm.
your things are your things, and I have no reason to go through your things. You have no reason to touch or go through my things. So I'm kind of like that too with my things. I know where everything is. Everything has a place. everything has to be in its place, because when it's not in its place, now I'm frantic looking for it and it should have been in its place. And now I'm mad at
Mhm.
myself because I didn't put it back in its place. And so I can relate to that part. And like she said, something so little can turn into something so big, but an adoptive parent wouldn't know to tap into that, because speaking from an older adoptee, if you didn't know the life that your adoptee had prior to being adopted, you wouldn't know that that's something that icks them, right? And now terminology is the ick. What's the ick? You wouldn't know that that's something that bothered them, not
Mhm.
being able to, or someone touching their things or taking their things from one place to another. Everybody knows, and if you don't know, that when foster children leave foster homes, we literally take whatever we can in a black plastic bag and we keep it moving. Okay, so we know what's in that bag. It's not like we got so many things where we're like, oh my God, I don't care if so and so takes that, or if I don't care. No, those are our things. And so I think that in that part of the story, I would offer the advice of, seeing what is it about those what were they, straws or something like that? They were, I don't forget what they were, straws, random plastic tubes from a storage drawer, and it's almost like as an adoptive parent, you wouldn't even know to hone in on that though. Like she said, I wouldn't even think that that's a big thing. So that's not something that you would even naturally come out and say, did you have a problem with me moving those straws? Because as a parent, you're like, well, the straws was in the wrong place. They need to go over here. I'm putting them over here. Okay. Like that wouldn't be something. But again, an adoptee's life is now different. And so any little difference or anything that rocks the boat a little bit will be like a little ticking time bomb for the adoptee until they get comfortable, until they can, voice how they feel about these things. But I don't think that that's something that a parent would even hone in on and say, did you have an issue with me moving those plastic tubes? Because I talked a little bit earlier about structure, and I also talked about house rules. A lot of times the house rules are given to the children that are coming into the house, and the children have no say in those rules. And I'm not saying that your children should be running the house. However, if that is their home, right? That house is now their home. They should have some say in something in the home, right? And I don't know, it could be something silly. When we get home, we give each other hugs. No one comes into a room without saying hello, I love you. No one leaves without saying I love, like something that the adoptee comes up with though. It has to be something in their comfort level. It has to be something that they're comfortable doing, and something that, it may take time. You don't have to have this rule right now, but we want you to be included in the family rules, because you are family. We are family, and it shouldn't be I say you do this and you just do it.
Mhm.
There should be something that you require of me too. What's the rule? If you don't want me touching you in the morning, hugging you and tickling you in the morning, I won't do it. If you don't want me, asking you how your day was as soon as you got through the door and you need 15 minutes, then that's what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Adoptees should also be able to express their rules and their boundaries without feeling like they're doing something wrong, because they need space to be able to live through these emotions and ages and stages in life that are happening so swiftly, but you also feel like you're in slow motion too. So I think with the straws, I keep calling them straws, the tubes, whatever he had, a parent, adoptive parent wouldn't know to, it wouldn't throw them off to say, well, maybe it was me really moving those tubes, they would
Yeah, because
probably,
she wouldn't even know, like, just like the story said, like she's just cleaning up. She wouldn't know. Like that would be like just like if a cable was on the table, like a charger was on the table and you picked it up. and you wouldn't know that that actually would actually have an effect
Right.
where they like start flipping out, and um, but that's just a real time lesson that she has to navigate through.
Yeah.
And depending on how old the kid is, at the time, you know,
Yeah. And I mean, the initial question is nobody, or caption there says nobody really talks about how long it takes for a house to feel safe to an adopted child. And again, that house is supposed to be their home. So again, we I remember when I got adopted, and my parents made sure I had a pink room, and it was like a bag with all this stuff in it, coloring books and Tootsie Roll Pops and like all this stuff in it. And like it was just like the room was just so perfect, right? And we're worried about making sure everything is in place and making sure things are perfect. And I look, I mean, I had a baby. I didn't have an 8 or 9 year old. So, with babies, you kind of wing it a little bit. All right, you're going to sleep in the bed with me. I'm going to feed you every 2 hours, all that good stuff. But being that I was 9, it was like, okay, we have a little girl coming in, and we want to make sure things are good, and we want to make sure things look right. But at the same time, not to say if the room was jacked up, I would have been like, oh my God, I don't want to stay here. But to me, like it was great. It was beautiful to come into, but there are things that, I think that adoptive parents like probably stress over, like, oh my God, I want it to look great. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to, and it's really the things that are on the inside that you got to worry about. Like, I don't really think the adoptee is worried about the things of I mean, as long as you clean, be clean and clean up and things of that nature. But it's the things on the inside that come out. You have to cultivate that safe environment, and that's what makes them comfortable. It's not the pink carpet and the Barbie comforter. Those things are nice. It felt good to sleep in that bed, but at the end of the day, if I can't tell you how I'm feeling, I I don't know if it makes the bed feel even better. It just gave me more pillows to scream and cry into when I was frustrated and I couldn't voice how I felt, or I couldn't be vulnerable and honest about how I felt. So,
yeah, the emotional side is definitely where the safety comes from because um, when you have to learn how to trust this person, and you have to learn how to figure out what's going on. I mean, that's really, and it's not something that you can put in a video or put in a book. It's real time experience. It's like in the moment when it's happening. Um, because you know there were a lot of things that I went through. Like I used to fall out the bed when I was little.
on
um,
purpose, or you just would just fall out the bed?
Not on purpose. No, I just didn't know.
You know,
Next thing I know, I'll be on the floor. Then my dad would come in and put me back in the bed. But having those moments, those are still moments that showing the care for, you know, for a child,
Mhm.
and trying to place them in the right position in the bed or whatever. And those are real time moments. Those are not, that's not something you can read in a book. It's not something somebody can, um, well, you might see this, or it's a real time job. It is a real time emotional awareness job because you have to understand like what it's like you have to try to interpret what's going on, especially when someone's not speaking,
Yeah.
um, or if they're not telling you how they feel. And you have to try to figure out like, am I doing something wrong? Am I, not giving enough? Am I giving too much? And
And
that's
you
the thing you have to figure out as a parent. I think is really tough. I'm not saying that it's easy at all. Like depending on, what trauma the child has been through. And if you don't understand it or you don't try to understand it, like it could be difficult.
Yeah. And you have to lean into the moments where the adoptee is taking it there to that vulnerable space. Like
Mhm.
it's almost like you have to be ready for it again, even if you don't have the answers. You still have to hold space for it. You may not have the answers, but tell me more about how you feel about that. What else do you want me to, explore while I'm trying to get the answer for that? You have to really give space for that, because I know for me, I wasn't verbal, but I like to write, and I would write, and it was just like, all right, I'm not going to say it, but I'll write it. So that's the way that I was, communicating my feelings and my thoughts and my concerns and things of that nature. So I think the adoptee finds a way to get it out, but the adoptive parent also has to lean into that. Don't brush it off. Don't throw the letter out. Don't rip up the letter. Like, really read or take heed to what your child, the person that you signed up to take care of as if you birthed them,
Mhm.
you got to pay attention to those things, because I've been told on occasions, oh, we didn't read that. And I'm like, well, it was all in there, like, what do you mean you didn't read it? So, you have to lean into when your adoptee is opening up, because those are pivotal moments, and you're only gonna, nothing grows from comfort. And it's very easy to wake up and go to sleep every day and say, oh, we're a family, and not really do the things that family do in order to get over hurdles and get to the next level and get to a deeper level of connection. So, but we're gonna get up out of here. I had a couple more. However, this is just a teaser to the panel. This is probably nothing even compared to how the panel is going to be on the 16th. We have a special guest coming in next week. And so we're definitely going to prepare for that show with her. But you guys got to stay tuned. You definitely have to stay tuned. I believe there are going to be some good things coming. I can't tell you exactly what right now, but I just feel it in my soul that that good things are going to be coming. And sometimes we don't know everything that's happening behind the scenes, and those who are watching and absorbing and actually taking heed to these recordings and lives and playbacks, but they're out there, and we know because we were once those people who sat in the shadows and just watched and just listened until we felt comfortable enough to be like, you know what, I'm ready. Tu listo. I'm ready. So, whenever you guys are ready, we are here, and we welcome you being a part of the community. We're so thankful that you guys take the time out. I saw a like off of Facebook, so thank you guys so much for liking over on Facebook. Definitely share, subscribe. Join us next week, 9 p.m. Eastern. We have a guest. She reached out to me and said, you know what? I would love to be on the show, whatever it is. Let me know. Sign me up. So we're gonna sign her up. We already signed her up. Okay, she's on the schedule.
Locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded. Well, guys, thank you again. You know what I say, what I have been saying even before the Adoptee Foster show, but to all my adoptees out there and those who have been in the foster care system, be real with yourself so you can be real with everyone else. You guys have a great Wednesday. Join us tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, for the men's panel. We'll be back.